Welcome to Parenting Solutions for Teen and Preteen Education and Behavior, the show for parents who want real root cause solutions for learning, stress, and behavior at home and at school. Hosted by educators Mike Tyler and myself, Ryan Kimball, each episode gives you practical tools you can use right away to get results. Before we dive in, grab our free ebooks, the Parent's Survival Guide, and the Good Choices booklet. Use the click here link right in the show notes. Okay, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. So today we're going to be going over something that every parent, bar none, I'm sure, has struggled with at some point. And that is, why is your child struggling in school? And they may be smart, they may be really good at doing things, but they're still struggling. So first off, we're going to go over what exactly that means and give you some examples here. So Mike's going to start us out with that.
Okay. Yeah, struggling in school could mean a lot of different things. And I've seen just about every version of it in the last 35 years working with kids, working with parents. And so struggling in school could be that they're failing to grasp, they're struggling, they don't understand things, they're having a hard time learning. Okay, we talk about that stuff often, and we'll address that situation the same way as we're going to address in this episode the solutions for this other situation. Struggling in school could be something else completely. Struggling in school could be something not quite as easily identified as struggling in school. The kid is getting A's and B's in class. They're acing all their tests. They're doing fine. Their scores are up there. But you find out at some point, the parents usually find out that the kid's skipping classes, experimenting with drugs. If they're 16 years old, they're crashing cards or doing other crazy things. And all of those things, that was me when I was in school. Okay. Junior high school. Okay. That's also struggling in school. Okay. Because there is a situation where the child is just memorizing information, passing tests, but none of it seems to be useful for what they're trying to accomplish in life, which is mostly like, well, it seems to be fun, quote unquote, fun to party, go do things that, well, back in the 80s was illegal. Now a lot of things are becoming legalized, that were illegal back then. But, bottom line, non-survival activities. Okay. And so that's also struggling with school. You don't realize that is born out of the same causation as the child who is struggling to learn, trying to understand, doesn't really grasp various things, and they're feeling introverted and bad about the fact that they're not learning. There's this other situation where they're struggling to find any applicability, any usefulness for the information that they're getting. And so they bounce out. They're in a non-participation with the actual process of learning, and they're now exploring a whole different set of activities, which is not what we want. That's also struggling with school.
Makes sense. And you talked about or alluded to the fact that both of these types of struggling, whether it's you are struggling with grades and doing well in school, or that's fine, but you're struggling with the behavior side of it, have a similar or same remedy or approach. Can you go over that? Sure.
We've got our barriers to study, right? And we talk about these all the time in our episodes. And let's take it back to that magic formula, the look, learn, practice formula. The child who's struggling to understand things usually isn't being given the opportunity to observe the actual thing that they're studying about. Okay. Right. I mean, let's just take something like social studies. You can't learn about people and cultures only from reading a bunch of books. Okay. Right. where are the field trips? Where are the observational? Let's go and check out some of these different cultures. There's little mini cultures in any given city, in any given area. Let's attend some of these things. Let's learn about the different cultures from around the world that exist right here in the city where you live. Okay. There's all kinds of opportunities that are assisted by more observation. And we have this term, of viewing the actual mass, the thing itself of what you're studying about. Okay. And I just used the social studies as an example, but what about science? Let's get the kids actually making some little rockets that they shoot up in the air. I mean, why just hear about and learn about rockets or science? It has to be brought into something that you can look at and participate with. Okay. And those opportunities are few and far between in most schools, right? There are only a handful of what we would really call competency-based schools in America. Most of them are private and expensive, and that's fine. It's a good thing that they exist. You say, oh, expensive, but compared to what? Compared to a failing life? No, they're not really not expensive, but not all families in America can afford to send their kids to private schools. Every child should be given the opportunity to achieve competency and mastery of everything that they learn. Okay. And so that takes a lot of observation. That takes a lot of practice. And that learning step that's there in the middle of the look, learn, practice step is a formula. That step of learning has mostly to do with learning about the nomenclature, the words, the vocabulary, the language. What does this mean? What's explaining at the kids level. Okay. If you can really get a child to really understand the information, then they're going to be ready for the next step, which is to practice. And it's going to take a lot of practice. And the curriculum in today's school, the curricula, plural, I guess, it's changed a lot since 1905. Okay. And one of our guests on the podcast, Barbie Rivera, she wrote a whole book about that very thing.
Yeah.
Right? How things have changed since 1905 in terms of who changed it and what changes have been made. But the kids are not getting enough practice. They're not allowed to practice the most simple things at the early level to become proficient. Okay. And so both of these things of like struggling at the lower level of just learning or just at the other end of the spectrum, memorizing a bunch of information, spitting it back on a page, getting a bunch of A's and B's and stuff, but being no participant to the actual and no interest in the learning process. It all gets resolved by going back to the fundamentals, learning the words, learning how to master reading, pursuing becoming educated in things of the child's own choosing, that they have a genuine, like self-created purpose and reason for wanting to study this thing, and then assisting them to learn, and practice to assist them in their own decision to go down that path.
That's so easily applied, but takes so much doingness and persistence. And, these concepts, I think they make so much sense to a lot of people, but they do take so much work as well. So it's good that, to get the information. And like you said, there are other episodes where we go over even more in detail how to apply those things and get results with the 3 different barriers to study, how to do all these things, etc. But I was always it just kind of didn't make sense that when a child is having behavior problems, it could still be an education situation. So I just wanted to point that up again. That solution, whether they're having trouble with their grades and understanding what they're learning and flunking out or whatever, or they're having behavior problems, what we just went over it's the same solution because the manifestation is different for every child. Sometimes they lock up and can't learn, and then they're flunking out. Sometimes they are learning, quote unquote, at least they're getting good grades, but they're having all these behavior issues. And if you go back to that education piece, you oftentimes will resolve both sides of it.
Correct.
Yeah. So speaking from all your experience in helping people with this, what is maybe a good place to start for a parent who's trying to help their struggling teen or preteen? Like, with all this information you just went over, what's step one?
Well, it usually comes down to purposes. Okay, finding out what innate purpose, and bringing out and developing a purpose for going to school. Okay, let's agree on a common goal that we're trying to achieve. What do you want your life to be like when you grow up? Okay, that's a natural inclination on the part of the child. They want to grow up. They want to be able to do things on their own. And that's where they start getting into trouble if they don't have the educational foundation, which is why parents, people talk about, well, they're finding their boundaries or whatever. That finding the boundaries, and running cars into mailboxes and running cars into telephone poles, right? That's not a natural part of life. That is not necessary to the learning process. This is not true. This is you can learn how to drive a car well, right? Wouldn't that be the goal of you want to be able to learn to drive and sure, racing cars might be fun for somebody. Maybe somebody wants to race cars when they grow up. Well, okay, they're going to have to learn how to race cars safely, right? If they want to go down that path, right? And some parents involve their kids and learn how to do that stuff, or race motorcycles, or dirt bike racing, or whatever. Okay, let's take the approach that it can be learned to be done safely, and then but you can't just take all your children. You've got 5 of them or something, and just in this family we are dirt bike racers. You're like, well, little Susie Q she might not wanna, right? Or Susie Q might be the only one who wants to race dirt bikes. Okay. And the other kids are like, they have other things they want to do. They're interested in basketball or learning how to play that piano that looks so appealing or whatever. Right. Let's find out what that child wants to learn how to do. And then find out what are they running into? Where along in the learning process are they? Okay. And then let's assist them to back up and get a little bit better grip on that thing. But do it as teamwork. Let's assist them in accomplishing what they want to accomplish. So it always starts from that.
That's so awesome. It made me think of what I love watching the Olympics, as probably many people do. And they're happening right now as we do this episode.
Sure.
And I noticed they give the backstories of some of these world-class athletes. And as you were saying that, I was going, oh, you know what? So many of these Olympic-level athletes had stories where their parents observed that they had this passion for hockey or figure skating or whatever it was. And they really structured a life for them that allowed them to pursue that obvious interest that they had. Now, not all of us, especially those of us with 2 left feet, are going to become figure skaters or something, right? But, we have our own passions, and that, when you create that environment for your child that they can then pursue that, they become the best they can maybe in that area, or sufficient for their objectives and purposes for whatever they're pursuing. So I just had kind of a light bulb moment when you were saying that. I was like, oh, that's what happened to some of these Olympic athletes. The parents doubled down and allowed them to navigate and become who we're watching right now on TV.
Exactly. And not every child can be expected to become an Olympic champion. That's just ridiculous, right? That's in the area of sports and so forth. If that's but but what's the similar level accomplishment in other fields? One could become an award-winning illustrator, an award-winning writer. Okay, what is it that's that child's interest? And let's let them develop in the direction that they want to go, right? And I'm sure that successful people in any field, successful business owners, okay, they wanted to go down that road. Okay, they probably observed certain things and learned certain things along the way. It's part of that definition of ability, right? To observe, to make decisions, to act, and they were allowed to make those observations. They were allowed to make those decisions and act and move in that direction to become a successful business owner, right? So, yeah, let's find out what they want to do, and let's help them and assist them to accomplish competency and mastery in the area that they choose.
Awesome. I love that. I think that's really, really powerful. I don't even think we need to go over this more in this episode. We're a little shorter than we usually are, but I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that, but I think this idea of getting the purpose of the child, and that helps bring them out of the struggles they might be in by giving them something to create on in life and whatnot. What do you think?
Absolutely. It's a good place to start.
Awesome. Okay, great. So thank you everybody for listening. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us anytime, of course, and stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks for listening to Parenting Solutions for Teen and Preteen Education and Behavior today. If today's episode helped you or resonated with you, please share it with a parent who needs to hear it. And don't forget, you can download our free ebooks, The Parent's Survival Guide and The Good Choices Booklet. Just use the click here link in the show notes. We'll see you in the next episode.